Caroline Green thought she had it all: wealth, status, and control over her son Liam's life. But when she met Eloise Banks, a black and simple office worker, everything changed. Caroline had no idea that her cruelty would spark events that would shatter her world. Could a single moment of poor judgment destroy the relationships and the life she's worked so hard to build? If you're new, make sure to subscribe and join us in every new journey. Caroline Green, a wealthy socialite and shareholder of Prime Picks, a major e-commerce company, lived in a world of luxury and influence. Her son Liam, the company's CFO, was her pride and joy. She had carefully crafted his life, ensuring he moved in the right circles and associated with the right people. But fate had other plans. Enter Eloise Banks, a black and simple office worker at Prime Picks. Despite her modest appearance, there was something about Eloise that caught Liam's eye. Their first encounter in the company cafeteria sparked an instant connection. Liam found himself drawn to Eloise's warmth and authenticity, a refreshing change from his usual social circle. As Liam and Eloise's relationship blossomed, Carolyn watched from afar, her disapproval growing with each passing day. Little did she know, her judgment of Eloise would set in motion a chain of events that would turn her world upside down. Caroline's disapproval of Liam's relationship with Eloise grew stronger with each passing day. She couldn't fathom her son, the CFO of Prime Picks, dating a simple office worker. But it wasn't just Eloise's job that bothered Caroline. Her prejudice ran deeper. The fact that Eloise was black added another layer to Caroline's disapproval, though she'd never admit it openly. As Caroline plotted her next move, a question hung in the air. How far would a mother's prejudice push her? The lavish party she was planning wasn't just a social event, it was a battlefield where status, love, and hidden identities would collide. Caroline's mind raced with possibilities as she finalized the details for her upcoming soiree. This wasn't just any party. It was a carefully orchestrated event designed to showcase her family's wealth and status. More importantly, it was a trap set for Eloise. With a saccharine smile, Caroline extended an invitation to Eloise. "Darling, we'd love for you to join us at our little gathering next weekend," she cooed over the phone. "It'll be a wonderful opportunity for you to meet Liam's friends and family." Eloise, unaware of Caroline's true intentions, was thrilled. She saw this as a chance to finally gain acceptance from Liam's mother. "Thank you so much, Mrs. Green," she replied, her voice filled with genuine excitement. "Really excited about it." Little did Eloise know, Caroline had something far more sinister in mind. As soon as she hung up the phone, Caroline called her event planner. "Make sure we're short one server for the party," she instructed. "I have someone in mind to fill the position." The day of the party arrived, and Eloise showed up early, eager to help and make a good impression. Caroline greeted her with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Oh, Eloise dear, I'm so glad you're here," she said. "We've had a bit of a staffing issue. Would you mind terribly helping out as a server? Just until the party gets going, of course." Eloise, caught off guard but wanting to be helpful, agreed. Caroline quickly ushered her to the kitchen, where she was given a server's uniform and a tray of champagne flutes. As Eloise changed, her excitement turned to confusion and then to a sinking feeling in her stomach. Meanwhile, Liam was running late, stuck in traffic, and unaware of his mother's scheme. He arrived just as the party was in full swing, guests mingling and chatting, the air filled with the sound of clinking glasses and polite laughter. As Eloise moved through the crowd, tray in hand, she couldn't help but feel the weight of the guests' stares. Some looked right through her, while others regarded her with thinly veiled disdain. She tried to catch Liam's eye, but he was engrossed in conversation with a group of investors. Caroline watched from across the room, a small smile playing on her lips. Her plan was working perfectly. Eloise was clearly out of her depth, struggling to navigate the social intricacies of high society. This will show Liam that she doesn't belong in our world, Caroline thought to herself. The glittering chandeliers cast a soft glow over the extravagant party, highlighting the stark contrast between the elegantly dressed guests and Eloise in her simple server's uniform. As she moved through the crowd, tray in hand, she couldn't help but feel the weight of their stares. Some looked right through her, while others regarded her with thinly veiled disdain. Eloise tried to catch Liam's eye, but he was engrossed in conversation with a group of investors, oblivious to her predicament. The champagne flutes clinked, masking the tension building in the air. Amidst the glittering party, a storm was brewing, one that would expose the ugly truth behind polite smiles and designer gowns. As the evening wore on, Eloise overheard snippets of conversation that made her stomach churn. "Can you believe they're letting people like her serve at these events now?" One woman whispered to her companion, not bothering to lower her voice as Eloise passed by. Despite the discomfort, Eloise carried herself with grace and dignity. She engaged in brief but meaningful conversations with the few guests who bothered to acknowledge her, her natural warmth and intelligence shining through despite her role as a server. The night took a turn for the worse when a particularly snobbish woman approached Eloise, her face twisted in a scowl. "You there, girl?" she snapped, her voice dripping with condescension. "I've been waiting for a refill for ages. Don't you know how to do your job properly?" Eloise felt her cheeks burn with humiliation, but she took a deep breath and responded calmly. "I apologize for the inconvenience, ma'am. I'll fetch you a fresh glass right away." As she turned to leave, the woman muttered under her breath, "Honestly, where do they find these people?" Throughout this ordeal, Liam remained blissfully unaware of Eloise's situation. He moved from group to group, engaging in business discussions and social pleasantries, occasionally scanning the room for a glimpse of his girlfriend, but failing to spot her in her unexpected attire. As the party reached its peak, Caroline's plan was about to reach its climax. She had arranged for a particularly snobbish guest to accidentally spill red wine on Eloise, hoping to create a scene that would humiliate her in front of everyone. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. Just as the guest was about to execute the cruel trick, Liam finally spotted Eloise. His face registered shock, then confusion, and finally, anger as he realized what was happening. In that moment, as Liam's eyes locked with Eloise's across the crowded room, a silent understanding passed between them. But in a world where appearances are everything, how long can the truth stay hidden? And what will be the cost when it finally comes to light? Some guests had begun to take notice of Eloise, wondering aloud who this intriguing young woman was. "She seems far too refined to be just staff," one woman whispered to her husband. "I wonder if she's someone important in disguise." Little did they know, their idle speculation was closer to the truth than they could have imagined. As the night wore on, the tension in the air grew thick, like a rubber band stretched to its limit, ready to snap at any moment. The party ended, but the echoes of that night lingered like a bad dream. Eloise found herself alone in her apartment, her mind replaying every humiliating moment. The weight of judgmental stares and whispered insults pressed down on her, making it hard to breathe. She had gone to that party hoping for acceptance, but instead found herself serving drinks to people who saw her as nothing more than the help. Liam, still reeling from the shock of seeing Eloise in a server's uniform, spent the next few days trying to reach her. His calls went unanswered, his messages unread. The realization of what had transpired hit him like a punch to the gut. How could he have been so blind to his mother's scheme? The guilt gnawed at him, keeping him up at night. At work, Liam's distraction was palpable. He fumbled through meetings, his mind elsewhere. Colleagues exchanged worried glances as the usually sharp CFO struggled to keep up with discussions. The strain of his personal life was spilling over into his professional responsibilities, and it didn't go unnoticed. Eloise, meanwhile, threw herself into her work, using it as a shield against the pain. She avoided the cafeteria, taking her lunch at her desk. When she spotted Liam in the hallway, she ducked into the nearest room, her heart racing. The hurt and betrayal she felt were too raw, too fresh to face him. As days turned into weeks, the emotional toll on both Liam and Eloise became evident. Dark circles under their eyes told of sleepless nights. Their colleagues whispered about the change in their demeanor, speculating about what could have caused such a shift. Caroline, oblivious to the depth of damage she had caused, continued to push Liam towards what she considered more suitable matches. Her attempts at setting him up with daughters of her socialite friends only further strained their relationship. Liam's responses became curt, his patience wearing thin with each passing day. The tension at Prime Picks grew as Liam's performance continued to suffer. Board members began to question his focus, wondering if personal issues were affecting his judgment. In a world where appearances meant everything, the cracks in Liam's carefully crafted image were beginning to show. Eloise, despite her pain, couldn't help but notice the strain on Liam. She saw the worry lines etched on his face, the slump in his shoulders as he walked through the office. Part of her wanted to reach out, to comfort him, but the memory of that night held her back. How could she trust him again after being left to face such humiliation alone? As the days wore on, both Liam and Eloise found themselves at a crossroads. Liam grappled with the realization that his mother's actions had cost him more than just a relationship. His integrity, his values, everything he thought he stood for was now in question. How could he have allowed this to happen? Eloise, on the other hand, began to question her own worth. The confidence she had worked so hard to build over the years seemed to crumble in the face of such blatant prejudice. She wondered if she would ever truly belong in a world that judged her so harshly based on her appearance and perceived status. The aftermath of that fateful night had set in motion a chain of events that threatened to unravel everything. As Liam and Eloise struggled to navigate their new reality, neither of them realized that the true test of their character was yet to come. As the dust settled from that fateful night, a different kind of storm brewed within the walls of Prime Picks. The company's normally bustling atmosphere felt strained, with whispers and sidelong glances replacing the usual chatter. Liam's distraction was palpable, his mind clearly elsewhere as he fumbled through meetings and reports. Caroline noticed her son's lack of focus, her frustration growing with each passing day. She cornered him in his office, her voice low but sharp. "Liam, what's going on with you? The board is starting to ask questions about your performance." Liam looked up, dark circles under his eyes betraying his exhaustion. "I'm fine, Mother. Just a bit tired, that's all." Caroline's eyes narrowed. "This is about that girl, isn't it? Eloise? I thought we were past this nonsense." Liam's jaw clenched. "Her name is Eloise, and she's not nonsense. What you did at that party was cruel and unnecessary." "I did what I had to do to protect you, to protect this company," Caroline hissed. "You're the CFO, Liam. You can't afford distractions, especially not from someone so unsuitable." As they argued, neither noticed the figure standing in the doorway, Benjamin Banks, the founder of Prime Picks. His presence commanded respect, his tailored suit and confident stance a stark contrast to the tension in the room. "Is everything all right here?" Benjamin's deep voice cut through their heated exchange. Caroline's demeanor changed instantly, a smile plastered on her face. "Benjamin, we didn't see you there. Everything's fine. Just a little mother-son disagreement." Benjamin's eyes moved between them, assessing. "I see. Well, I hope it's nothing that will affect our upcoming board meeting. We have some important decisions to make about the company's future." As Benjamin spoke, Liam couldn't help but notice a familiar warmth in the older man's eyes, reminiscent of someone he knew. There was something about his mannerisms, the way he held himself, that nagged at Liam's memory. Caroline, oblivious to Liam's thoughts, was all charm. "Of course not, Benjamin. You know how dedicated we are to Prime Picks. We'll have everything in order for the meeting." Benjamin nodded, his gaze lingering on Liam. "Good. And Liam, my boy, make sure you're well rested. We'll need your sharp mind for what's coming." As Benjamin left, Caroline turned back to Liam, her voice low and urgent. "You see? This is what's at stake. We can't afford any mistakes, any distractions. Whatever's going on with you, sort it out. Fast." Liam watched his mother leave, her words echoing in his mind. He couldn't shake the feeling that there was more going on than met the eye. The company's atmosphere had been tense lately, with whispers of big changes on the horizon. As he tried to focus on his work, Liam's thoughts drifted to Eloise. He missed her, the ache in his chest a constant reminder of what he'd lost. But there was something else, a nagging feeling that he was missing a crucial piece of the puzzle. Little did Liam know, the answers he sought were closer than he realized. As Benjamin Banks made his way through the office, he paused at a desk, his eyes softening as they fell on a framed photo. It was a picture of a young girl with a bright smile, her eyes full of determination. The same eyes that had captured Liam's heart. Fate has a funny way of bringing people together, even when the world seems determined to keep them apart. As Liam stood outside Eloise's apartment, he couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change. But would it be for better or worse? The cool evening air nipped at Liam's skin as he paced back and forth in front of Eloise's building. Weeks of silence had led to this moment, and now that he was here, he found himself at a loss for words. His hand hovered over the buzzer, trembling slightly before he finally pressed it. "Who is it?" Eloise's voice crackled through the intercom, a mix of surprise and wariness in her tone. "It's me, Liam," he responded, his voice barely above a whisper. "Can we talk, please?" There was a long pause, and for a moment, Liam thought she might refuse. Then the door buzzed, granting him entry. As he made his way up the stairs, his mind raced with all the things he wanted to say. When Eloise opened her apartment door, the sight of her took his breath away. She looked tired, her eyes bearing the weight of sleepless nights. But to Liam, she was still the most beautiful woman he'd ever seen. "Hi," he said softly, suddenly feeling like a schoolboy with his first crush. Eloise stepped aside, letting him in without a word. The silence between them was heavy, filled with unspoken emotions and lingering hurt. "I'm sorry," Liam finally blurted out, unable to bear the tension any longer. "What happened at that party? I had no idea my mother would do something like that. I should have protected you, should have noticed sooner." Eloise's shoulders sagged, the facade of strength she'd been maintaining finally crumbling. "It's not just about the party, Liam," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's about everything it represents. The judgment, the prejudice. I felt so alone, so out of place." Liam took a step towards her, wanting desperately to close the gap between them. "I know, and I'm so sorry. I've been blind to so many things, Eloise, but being apart from you these past weeks, it's made me realize how much you mean to me." Eloise looked up at him, her eyes searching his face. "And what about your mother? Your world? I don't fit into that, Liam. I never will." "You're wrong," Liam said firmly. "You fit into my world perfectly. It's my world that needs to change, not you. I love you, Eloise, and I'm ready to fight for us no matter what anyone else thinks." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with promise and possibility. Eloise's eyes widened, a mix of hope and fear flashing across her face. "You love me?" she asked, her voice barely audible. Liam closed the distance between them, gently taking her hands in his. "I do. I love everything about you. Your strength, your kindness, your integrity. Being apart from you has shown me that I don't want to live in a world where you're not by my side." Tears welled up in Eloise's eyes as she looked at their intertwined hands. "I love you too, Liam. But love isn't always enough. There's so much standing between us." "Then we'll face it together," Liam said, his voice filled with determination. "I know it won't be easy, but you're worth fighting for. We're worth fighting for." As they stood there, holding each other close, both Liam and Eloise felt a shift. The pain of the past weeks began to melt away, replaced by a cautious hope for the future. But even as they reconciled, neither of them could shake the feeling that there were still secrets lurking in the shadows. Eloise thought of her true identity, the weight of her family legacy pressing down on her. Liam remembered the photo in Benjamin's office, the nagging feeling that he was missing something important. Eloise sat in her small office, her mind still reeling from the events of the past few weeks. The reconciliation with Liam had brought a measure of peace, but the weight of her secret pressed heavily on her shoulders. Her phone buzzed, startling her from her thoughts. It was a message from her grandfather, Benjamin Banks, requesting her presence in his office immediately. As she made her way through the sleek corridors of Prime Picks, Eloise couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change. She knocked on the imposing oak door of Benjamin's office, her heart racing. "Come in, Eloise," Benjamin's warm voice called out. She stepped inside, taking in the familiar sight of her grandfather's domain. Benjamin sat behind his desk, his eyes twinkling with a mix of pride and determination. "It's time," he said simply, gesturing for her to take a seat. Eloise's breath caught in her throat. She knew exactly what he meant, but the reality of it still felt surreal. Benjamin leaned forward, his voice low but firm. "I know what happened at the party," he began, his expression darkening. "The way you were treated. It was unacceptable, but you handled it with grace and dignity, just as I knew you would." Eloise felt a lump form in her throat, the memory of that humiliating night still raw. Benjamin continued, his voice growing stronger. "You've proven yourself beyond my wildest expectations, Eloise. Your work ethic, your integrity, your vision for the future of this company. It's everything I could have hoped for in a successor." He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. Eloise felt a mix of emotions swirling within her: pride, fear, excitement, and a hint of vindication. "It's time for you to take your rightful place," Benjamin declared. "As of tomorrow, you will be announced as the new CEO of Prime Picks." The words hung in the air, heavy with implication. Eloise's mind raced, processing the enormity of what her grandfather had just said. She thought of Liam, of Caroline, of all the people who had underestimated her. How would they react when they learned the truth? "But grandfather," Eloise began, her voice barely above a whisper. "What about Liam? He's the CFO. Everyone expects him to—" Benjamin held up a hand, silencing her gently. "Liam is an excellent CFO, but you, my dear, have the vision to lead this company into the future. Your experiences, both the good and the bad, have shaped you into exactly the leader we need." As the reality of her new position sank in, Eloise felt a surge of determination. She had worked hard for this, had earned it through her own merit. The fact that it would also serve as a powerful statement against those who had judged her unfairly was an added bonus. "There will be those who question this decision," Benjamin warned, his eyes serious. "You'll face challenges, both from within the company and from our competitors. Are you ready for that?" Eloise straightened in her chair, meeting her grandfather's gaze with newfound confidence. "I am," she said firmly. "I've been preparing for this my whole life, even if I didn't always know it." Benjamin's face broke into a proud smile. "That's my girl," he said warmly. "Now, let's discuss how we're going to announce this to the board and the company." As they began to plan, Eloise couldn't help but think of the implications of this revelation. How would Liam react when he learned that the woman he loved was not just an ordinary employee, but the granddaughter of the company's founder and its new CEO? And Caroline? How would she handle the knowledge that the woman she had so cruelly dismissed now held the future of the company in her hands? Caroline Green stood in her opulent living room, her world crumbling around her. The news of Eloise's true identity had hit her like a tidal wave, washing away the foundations of her carefully constructed life. How quickly can a lifetime of status and influence vanish when faced with the consequences of one's own prejudice? The revelation came during a board meeting she had insisted on attending. As Benjamin Banks introduced Eloise as his granddaughter and the new CEO of Prime Picks, Caroline felt the blood drain from her face. Her eyes darted to Liam, expecting to see shock mirroring her own. Instead, she saw a mix of pride and love in his eyes as he gazed at Eloise. "This can't be happening," Caroline whispered, her voice barely audible over the applause filling the room. But it was happening, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. In the days that followed, Caroline watched helplessly as her social circle began to distance themselves. Invitations to exclusive events dried up, and whispers followed her wherever she went. The very people who had once hung on her every word now avoided her gaze, their smiles turning cold and dismissive. At a charity gala she had organized months ago, Caroline found herself standing alone, clutching her champagne flute like a lifeline. She overheard snippets of conversation, each one a dagger to her heart. Can you believe how she treated Eloise? And all this time, she was Benjamin Banks's granddaughter. "I always thought there was something off about Caroline, the way she looked down on everyone." As the company leadership shifted, Caroline felt her influence slipping away. Eloise's ideas were favored over Liam's in meetings, and Caroline's suggestions were politely but firmly dismissed. She watched as her son's relationship with Eloise grew stronger, defying her earlier prejudices and leaving her on the outside looking in. One evening, as Caroline sat alone in her empty mansion, she picked up a framed photo of herself and Liam from years ago. They were both smiling, their world seemingly perfect. Now, that world was gone, replaced by one where she was increasingly isolated and irrelevant. Her phone buzzed with a message from her closest friend, or rather, former friend. It was a terse note canceling their long-standing weekly lunch date. Caroline felt a lump form in her throat as she realized just how quickly her social standing had crumbled. In a moment of clarity, Caroline reflected on her actions, the cruel words she had spoken, the judgments she had passed so easily. She thought of Eloise, serving drinks at that party, enduring the sneers and whispers with grace and dignity. The contrast between Eloise's strength and her own pettiness was stark and humbling. "I was completely blind," Caroline whispered to herself, echoing the words she had heard so often in the past weeks. Believing that money and status were all that mattered. But now I've learned that treating people with kindness is what's truly important. As she sat there, surrounded by the trappings of wealth that suddenly seemed so meaningless. Caroline felt a profound sense of loss, not just for her status or her influence, but for the relationships she had damaged and the opportunities she had squandered. The sound of laughter drifted through her open window. A group of young people walking by, carefree and happy. Caroline felt a pang of envy, not for their youth, but for their apparent ease with each other. She wondered if she'd ever truly experienced that kind of genuine connection, or if all her relationships had been as superficial as the world she had built around herself. As Caroline grappled with her loneliness, across town, Liam and Eloise were forging a bond that defied societal expectations. But with Eloise's new role as CEO, would their relationship withstand the shifting power dynamics? Liam and Eloise sat in her new office, still processing the whirlwind of changes that had swept through their lives. Eloise's desk, once cluttered with paperwork from her old position, now held reports and proposals, befitting her role as CEO. Liam couldn't help but feel a mix of pride and nervous energy as he watched her confidently review the documents. "You know," Liam said, breaking the comfortable silence, "I always knew you were extraordinary, but seeing you in this role, it's something else entirely." Eloise looked up, a small smile playing on her lips. "It's a lot to take in," she admitted. "Sometimes I still expect to wake up and find myself back at my old desk." Their eyes met, and for a moment, they both reflected on the journey that had brought them to this point. The humiliation at the party, the weeks of separation, and the shocking revelation of Eloise's true identity. It all seemed like a lifetime ago. "I'm sorry, again, for what happened at the party," Liam said, his voice low. "I should have noticed sooner. Should have done something." Eloise reached across the desk, taking his hand in hers. "We've been through this, Liam. It wasn't your fault. And in a way, I'm grateful for what happened. It showed me who I could trust, who would stand by me regardless of my position." Their fingers intertwined, a physical representation of the bond they'd forged through adversity. But as they sat there, both were acutely aware of the new dynamic between them. Eloise was no longer just Liam's girlfriend. She was his boss, the CEO of the company he'd worked so hard to help build. "So," Liam said, a hint of playfulness in his tone, "does this mean I have to call you Ms. Banks in meetings now?" Eloise laughed, the sound breaking the tension. "Only if you want to sleep on the couch," she teased back. Their banter was interrupted by a knock on the door. Benjamin Banks, Eloise's grandfather, entered with a warm smile. "Am I interrupting?" he asked, his eyes twinkling as he took in the scene before him. "Not at all, grandfather," Eloise said, straightening in her chair. "Liam and I were just discussing some workplace dynamics." Benjamin chuckled. "I'm sure you were. Liam, my boy, I hope you're adjusting well to the changes around here." Liam nodded, his posture relaxing slightly. "It's been a bit of a shock, sir, but a good one. Eloise is doing an amazing job." As they discussed the company's future plans, Liam couldn't help but marvel at how naturally Eloise took to her new role. She spoke with confidence and vision, her ideas meshing seamlessly with Benjamin's experience and Liam's financial expertise. Later that evening, as they walked hand in hand through the city park, Eloise turned to Liam. "Are you really okay with all of this?" she asked, her voice tinged with concern. "I know it's not what either of us expected." Liam stopped, turning to face her. "Eloise, I love you. Not your title, not your family name, just you. The woman who captured my heart with her kindness, her strength, and her incredible mind. If anything, seeing you in this role, has only made me fall more in love with you." Tears welled up in Eloise's eyes as she pulled Liam close. "I love you too," she whispered. "Thank you for standing by me through all of this." As they continued their walk, the city lights twinkling around them, both Liam and Eloise felt a sense of peace settle over them. They had weathered the storm of prejudice and deceit, emerging stronger and more united than ever. In the coming weeks, they faced their fair share of challenges. There were raised eyebrows and whispered comments about favoritism, but Liam and Eloise met each obstacle head-on. They maintained a strict professionalism at work while nurturing their personal relationship outside office hours. Eloise's leadership style, a blend of innovation and compassion, began to transform the company culture. She implemented policies that promoted diversity and inclusion, drawing on her own experiences to create a more welcoming environment for all employees. Liam, for his part, threw himself into his role as CFO with renewed vigor. He found that working alongside Eloise brought out the best in him, challenging him to think bigger and push beyond his comfort zone. While success embraced the young couple, a storm brewed in Caroline's once pristine social circle. The mighty had fallen, and redemption seemed like a distant dream. Caroline Green, once the queen of her elite social circle, now found herself on the outside looking in. The invitations that used to flood her mailbox had slowed to a trickle, and even those few were more obligation than desire. The irony wasn't lost on Caroline. She had spent years cultivating a reputation built on exclusivity and social status, only to find herself excluded from the very world she helped create. Her phone, once constantly buzzing with messages and calls, now lay silent for days at a time. As the weeks passed, Caroline's attempts to reconcile with Liam and Eloise were met with cautious responses. She tried to reach out, her voice tinged with desperation as she left voicemails and sent text messages. But the damage she had caused ran deep, and trust wasn't easily rebuilt. One afternoon, Caroline found herself sitting across from Liam in a small cafe. The tension between them was palpable, a stark contrast to the warmth they once shared. "I'm sorry," Caroline said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I know those words aren't enough, but I truly am sorry for everything." Liam's expression remained guarded. "It's not just about me, Mother. It's about how you treated Eloise, how you've treated so many people over the years." Caroline nodded, feeling the weight of her actions pressing down on her. "I know. I've been wrong about so many things. I want to make it right, but I don't know how." As she spoke, Caroline realized the true cost of her prejudice. It wasn't just about lost social status or invitations. It was about the relationships she had damaged, the trust she had broken, and the love she had pushed away. Liam's voice softened slightly. "It's going to take time, Mother, and it's not just up to me. Eloise, the people at the company, you've hurt a lot of people." Caroline's eyes welled up with tears. "I understand. I'm willing to do whatever it takes. I want to be better." As they parted ways, Caroline felt a glimmer of hope. It was small, fragile, but it was there. She knew the road to redemption would be long and difficult, but for the first time in her life, she was ready to put in the work. In the following weeks, Caroline began to take small steps. She volunteered at a local community center, helping those she would have once looked down upon. She listened more and judged less, slowly learning to see the value in people beyond their social status or bank account. At Prime Picks, Caroline's influence had all but disappeared. She watched from the sidelines as Eloise implemented changes that transformed the company culture. Diversity and inclusion initiatives flourished, and the office buzzed with a new energy that Caroline had never experienced before. One day, as she was leaving the office after a board meeting, Caroline overheard two employees talking excitedly about a new program Eloise had introduced. Their enthusiasm was contagious, and Caroline found herself smiling despite her own circumstances. As she walked home, Caroline reflected on the true cost of judging others. It wasn't just about the immediate consequences or the social fallout. It was about the richness of experience and connection she had denied herself for so long. She had spent years building walls to keep others out, only to find herself trapped inside. As the dust settled on Caroline's social downfall, a quiet revolution was brewing within PrimePix. With Eloise at the helm, how would the company's culture shift, and what ripple effects would it have on the tech industry at large? Eloise stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of her new office, taking in the bustling city below. The view was a stark contrast to her old cubicle, but it wasn't the only thing that had changed. In just a few short weeks, she'd gone from pretending to be a simple office worker to leading one of the most influential tech companies in the world. As she turned back to her desk, her eyes fell on a framed photo of her and Liam. A smile tugged at her lips as she remembered their journey. Despite the challenges they had faced, their love had only grown stronger. Liam had been her rock through this transition, offering unwavering support and encouragement. The intercom buzzed, interrupting her thoughts. "Ms. Banks, the department heads are ready for the meeting," her assistant's voice came through. Eloise took a deep breath, straightening her blazer. "Thank you. I'll be right there," she replied, her voice steady and confident. As she walked into the conference room, Eloise felt a surge of determination. This was her chance to implement the changes she had dreamed of for years. The faces around the table looked at her expectantly, a mix of curiosity and respect in their eyes. "Good morning, everyone," Eloise began, her voice clear and strong. "Today, we're going to discuss some new initiatives I believe will revolutionize not just our company, but potentially the entire industry." Over the next hour, Eloise laid out her vision for PrimePix. She spoke of diversity and inclusion programs that went beyond mere lip service, of sustainable practices that would set new standards in the tech world, and of innovative projects that would push the boundaries of what they thought possible. As the meeting progressed, Eloise could see the excitement building in the room. Ideas flowed freely, with team members building on each other's suggestions. The energy was palpable, a stark contrast to the stuffy, hierarchical meetings of the past. Liam, sitting at the far end of the table, couldn't help but beam with pride. He watched as Eloise effortlessly commanded the room, her intelligence and compassion shining through in every word. This was the woman he had fallen in love with, now in her element, changing the world, one meeting at a time. In the weeks that followed, the changes at PrimePix were swift and significant. Eloise implemented a mentorship program for underrepresented groups in tech, partnered with local schools to provide coding classes for underprivileged youth, and launched a series of eco-friendly initiatives that quickly garnered attention from industry watchdogs. The office buzzed with a new energy. Employees who had once felt overlooked now found their voices heard and their ideas valued. The company's output soared, with innovative products and services hitting the market at an unprecedented rate. One evening, as Eloise and Liam walked hand in hand through a local park, she paused, looking up at him with a mixture of love and gratitude. "I couldn't have done any of this without you," she said softly. Liam squeezed her hand, his eyes twinkling. "You've always had this in you, Eloise. I'm just honored to be by your side as you change the world." As they continued their walk, Eloise reflected on the journey that had brought her here. From the humiliation at Caroline's party to the revelation of her true identity, every step had led her to this moment. She felt a deep sense of gratitude for the love she had found in Liam and the opportunity to make a real difference in the world. The path ahead wasn't without its challenges. There were still skeptics to win over, competitors to outmaneuver, and an entire industry to influence. But as Eloise looked at Liam, feeling the warmth of his hand in hers, she knew she was ready for whatever came next. As the dust settled on this whirlwind journey, the true lessons became clear. Prejudice, no matter how deeply rooted, could be overcome by love and understanding. Eloise and Liam's story showed that life has a way of surprising us, often when we least expect it. The power of looking beyond surface judgments was evident in how quickly fortunes could change. Caroline's fall from grace and Eloise's rise to leadership highlighted the unpredictable nature of life and the danger of basing one's worth solely on status or appearance. Perhaps the most powerful takeaway was the transformative effect of empathy. In both personal and professional spheres, understanding and compassion proved to be the keys to meaningful connections and success. As viewers reflect on this story, they might ask themselves, what hidden biases am I carrying? And how might they be limiting my own growth in relationships?